It's from like the 1950s.
Oh, it's like...
Not actually. Here we go! Why your renovation went over budget. So one of the big things is going to be cost plus versus fixed price. Ultimately, like I said, both of them, you need to work with someone who's reputable and has good contracts, because neither one guarantees you what your budget is going to be. But more often with the fixed price, at least you have a good understanding of where that pricing is sitting for your project and how much you're going to pay. Cost plus can just leave things a lot more open-ended. There's a bit less onus and accountability on really dialing in budgets for the builder. And that sometimes works for clients who want to be a bit more flexible. Maybe their scope of work isn't fully developed, or they just want to get going. But if you want to have more guarantee around where's my budget actually going to fall on this project, a fixed price model is typically going to be a bit better. So number two is going to be not having a really clearly defined scope of work, and that can mean a few things. One of them that it can mean is that on the finishing side, you've carried more allowances than actually specified selections, or you're kicking those decisions down the road. Typically those changes in a few ways. One is that the allowance may not cover what you end up selecting, and therefore you don't have that understanding when you're signing the construction contract. The other is that sometimes those changes can come with and impact other things that result in additional costs. The other problem with a defined scope and not having one is that work may not have been done on the back end for opening up drywall, taking a look at what it's actually going to take. So on the rough side of the project, you also get demos, the most stressful part, because then you open it up and all of a sudden there's a bunch of extras. So the more work you can do to define the scope of work, even if you're building in, hey, we think this might happen, is better than starting off super big or with not enough detail where it's open-ended and then you're just getting hit with additionals throughout the project. The other one's going to be having a clear process for changes. You can get in with a fixed scope and even that can be defined, but if you run into changes as the homeowner, how are those changes handled? Does the work happen before I approve a change order? Or if the work just has to happen, are you doing it and then charging me for it? At what point do I approve what the cost is going to be? So when the thing's found, are we halting work and then sitting down, coming up to what the price is going to be, then executing the work after an approval? How formal is that approval process? And then also, I think having some level of understanding on how do the fee structures and everything work around those changes. Now, in transparency, your fee structure on a change order is probably going to be higher than what you would see on construction contract, because everything's being done on the fly. It takes more resources to pull it together, but you still want to have an understanding of where that pricing's coming from, because you don't want to get into a situation where changes happen and it seems like those numbers are just astronomical because, you know, whomever you are working with knows that this is something that has to get done and therefore can put the price that they want. Not saying that happens, but I also know it's a real fear of homeowners. The reason that your project may have gone over budget, one of them is going to be the contract structure. If it was a fixed price or if it was a cost plus, where you're more so falling into having to pay for every incremental cost of potentially a misestimated project. The other one's going to be not having a clearly defined scope of work. So did you understand what was behind the walls? Were all the selections made, or were all those added in after a contract and work had already started? Number three is change orders. How was the process handled? Did you have a fixed price, but then all of a sudden change orders get out of hand and you're caught holding the bag on that? And then finally, when you went through the process of qualifying and selecting your contractor, was it one that you actually felt confident going in with? Or was it one where you were kind of more so hoping that they were going to follow through on the promises and things they were saying they were going to do? And so as we move through and kind of develop more of this content, we want to help you understand all of those things a bit better. And so if you want to subscribe and follow along for more content like this, follow us on Instagram at Shift Projects to see as we put out some more micro content around this sort of thing.